Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to another video. All right, you guys, it is week two um, of the book series, right? So then I do apologize for being late, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my stuff set up. I have a lot of stuff happening. And so, but I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining me. If you are new around here, my name is Pastor Shakema. I am I primarily women. I do women's ministry. I have Titus 2 Women, Grace, Coffee and Conversation. Also have a hang on, y'all. My connection is acting a little bit wonky right now, and I'm trying to get it back working. I'm in several different places, several different platforms. So thank you for joining me wherever you're joining me from. I'm excited to have you guys. So we're talking about marriage. We're talking about contentment in marriage. We're talking about my journey, a little bit of how the Lord brought me to this place. If you've missed last week or you were not with me any length of time, so new, I know my TikTok family is very new to some of the lives, but I was one of those. I was married I was with someone and married 18 years. I've been divorced now going on 16 years. And so for the last 16 years I've been single. I desire marriage, and I've not dated anyone. I've had plenty of people interested in things I wasn't interested in, and so I have had to bypass a lot of people. I've had I've talked to people, but I wouldn't consider myself dating because I've just never had that experience. I dated one person in that whole time of the 16 years. That last 6 months, and it was 6 months too long. It should have been done way before the 6 months was over. But I think it was about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I can't pinpoint the time. 2 or 3 years ago, that I found a book called "God is a Matchmaker." The author, his name is Derek Prince, and when I read that book, because I was one of those people, and this may not be you, this may just be me. I can't who you are and who as opposed to I am. But I born for marriage. I was always supposed to be married. I believe that is what the Lord has for me. And with that being said, when I found my marriage being dissolved, I couldn't understand what was going on. I'm like, I just knew that I was such a good catch that I was going to be married within a year of my separation and divorce. I knew for sure. You could not convince me otherwise. Hey, ma'am. Well, that's okay. No worries. It's not for everybody. This is just for this is the 40 days of love is usually what I do for the married couples. And then the this one is specifically for singles, divorce, those who desire marriage. So if this is not for you, it's no problem. But it is for somebody, right? Thank you so much for sharing the video. Share, look, like the video, share, do all the somebody may need to, they may need a particular topic, right? And so here's I just want to make sure that we absolutely dial down how we navigate this, because there are people, I'm saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost, fire baptized with the evidence of speaking in tongues. I love God with my whole being. I love the Lord. But it can be a little bit tricky out here in these streets when you're trying to find somebody or have somebody find you. You're welcome, ma'am. And you don't want to do it wrong. Does that make sense? I don't want to do it wrong. Thank you so much. My handy dandy assistant just brought my coffee. I don't want to but I was so focused on finding a husband, finding a husband. And I would just be around places and I would see a man and go, God, is that him? God, is that him? God, is that him? Is that him? God, surely that's him. I know that's the one. Or somebody would have interest in me. And then would be like, well, he has to be the one because he's showing interest. When trust me, he wasn't the one. Lots of them have not been the one. So it was almost like it just continually plagued my mind. And then you have those well-meaning people, and I hope they're well-meaning because some of them just get on your nerve. And they're saying to you, well, as soon as you stop thinking about a man, you're gonna find one. Or when you least expect it, one's gonna show up. Or when you're not looking for it, he gonna show up. Now, I cannot tell you that is just crazy. It's I think it's well-meaning because people don't want you to feel a type of way. The whole time they're going home to their husband, right? They're going home to their boo. They're going home to be all booed up, and you going by yourself. It's not helpful. Let me just say that to those of you who have done that it's just not helpful. While we do understand what you're saying, it doesn't make us feel any better when we know our situation and our circumstances. Again, I still come home to myself with my kids, but there is no spouse, no partner for me to have. My sister and another good friend, I didn't have adult conversation with on a regular basis. My coworkers at work, when I'm working, about my weekends. It's this whole big cycle of single. And how do you navigate the cycle of single when you just it's out here just crazy. I mean, absolutely. So I had joined a group. Hey now, little lady, good to see you. I had joined a group, and they were showing. And so what I'm going to do is continue to trust God, to ask him how to prepare myself for that. I came across this resource. And when I read the resource, when I read this particular longer every let me see. Oh goodness, really weird. Right now. Facebook people, Facebook people, YouTube people, if you can hear what I'm saying, or Instagram, because my computer is acting really, really weird. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm doing what the Lord what I believe. Hey, ma'am, good to see you. Can you hear me at all? Y'all let me know if you can hear me. And I'm Lord have mercy. Hey, ma'am, good to see you. So when I got the resource, right, it really helped my mind to settle. It's not like I didn't believe and trust the Lord, because I believe and trust the Lord. But when you've been single so long, when you've been single forever and you can't figure out what's going on, it's my computer that's not acting right, because I got all my bars. But I'm gonna keep going. If it keeps being weird, I may just have to start over. So y'all with me, I apologize. And when my age, right, I'm 49 years old. I've been single since I was 30 years old. right in the height of my life. I'm maturing into the things, still young, and here I am now, 40 years old, and I'm still single. And that does fine. And then in church culture, just let me say this because it needs to be, in church culture, we're taught women don't go after men. We don't we don't make advances. We don't let it be known that we're interested. We don't do any of those things, because if we do, so Instagram and Facebook, and so all my other non-TikTok people, I am going to probably have to restart my my computer's just not acting right. I don't know why, but I'm gonna keep. All right, it's just like, share, do all things. You're taught not to even seek after any relationship, but you're also not necessarily taught, depending on where you go, how to be a woman ready for a relationship. And so here's what I wanted to do. Even though I wasn't going out here seeking a relationship, I wanted to be ready for one if one was going to be available to me. If the Lord was going to send somebody for me, I wanted to be ready. And I continue to still make myself ready, even at this point in my life, and I'm still single. But just because I'm single doesn't mean I can't do need to do. What are things that you need to do, Shakema? Well, the very first thing that I tell people, learn who you are. Who are you as an individual? Because if you don't know who you are as an individual, you're never going to know who you are. You're never going to know your role in the couple nest if you can't figure out who you are. What do you like? Where do you like to go? And you like, I don't know. You don't even know what you like. You don't know where you want to go. You don't know nothing about yourself. I was in that group because my whole life I've been taking care of other people. I took care of my mom. I took care of my grandparents. Then I started having children. Then I had a husband, and it was taking care of everybody. Then the husband left, and I was left with just take care of the kids. And it took me to get to about 45 years old before I finally started doing anything for Shakema. So anywho, that's just a little background. When I got into this resource, though, it helped settle my mind. That's the way that I can explain it. Is mine was always so, is it him? Is it not? What is it? When is it going to happen? And I would see my friends getting married and coupling together, or it was on their third new relationship, and I haven't even been in one relationship. And I'm like, Lord, this cannot be. And all of these things just keep going in your mind. But when I read the resource, my mind just stopped. And here's what I had to understand. This was me. It had to be, Lord, I trust you, period. Things for me to do, too many people for me to try to touch lives, too many things for me that God has given me the assignment to do, to be worried about whether that's my husband. It was random people. I would just in the grocery store. God, is that him? Because people would be well-meaning people. Girl, you could meet somebody at the gas station. I'm at the gas station pumping gas, and every car that come by, I'm like, God, is that him? Who needs all that? Nobody needs all of that. So again, I had to settle myself down. Now, when we started this last week, we talked about marriage being the idea of God. I'm telling you that for sure. But let me also assure those of us now, if you desire marriage, but you are not married, would you put that in the chat so that I will know? Because there are some of us who desire it and some of us who don't, and that's okay. Paul had a ministry of singleness. Jesus had a singles ministry. Shakema don't have it. I still believe that God has somebody for me at 40. Just turned 40. I just had a birthday a couple weeks ago, about a month ago. And I still believe for me. Hey now, good to see you. Glad you all are here. But I believe that even until the Lord comes, there's still hope for me. I see couples all the time in their 50s and 60s and 70s getting married. Do I want to be that old? I do not. I'm young and I feel young in my heart and spirit. I may not be young on paper, but that's okay. I feel young, only as old as I feel. I told somebody I was 49 the other day. They looked at me like, was like, really? Okay. Yes, 49. But here's the truth, right? So we started last week and we talked about marriage being God's idea, and it is God's idea. In the beginning, when Adam was set over the garden and he was naming all the animals, God looked at him and, he was like, everybody else had anybody. He put him to sleep, took a rib out, formed a woman, presented the woman to him. And that was that. That was the first marriage. And I believe that marriage is God's idea every time. It is be discouraging, and I understand that totally, because at 49, I thought I'd be married for sure the next year when my ex-husband left me at 33. I thought by 34, oh, you ain't about to tell me nothing. So did you follow my 40 Days of Love? Go back to the 40 Days of Love series. That really should be a jumping off point to encouraging deeper fellowship and intimacy with your spouse. If you did not follow me during the 40 Days of Love, I'm going to encourage you to start there, because it can really help. And so, yeah, it gets discouraging until you know who you are, until you know what God has assigned you to do. And it doesn't mean that I don't think about it. I do think about it. I'm just saying, for me, it doesn't plague my mind like it used to. So I'm going to jump into chapter 2 and talk a little bit about his story. So chapter 2 is called Lyia. This is where the writer Derek talks about his wife, his first wife. Absolutely. And I think it will help. I mean, it helped. It helps. That's all I'm saying. So just, it's on my YouTube channel, or you can find it, but YouTube, there's a list. So anyway, he talks about his first wife, Lyia. Now, just some background information on him. He was married twice. He was married to his wife, Lyia, for 30 years. Now, you have to understand for real that God has called you to marriage when you do it the way he did it. He talks about in here how he was in Britain and living his life, going to school. He was trying to be a professor or something of that nature. I can't remember exactly. But he ended up getting called into service, right? Everything off, he got called into service. And so he ended up in a foreign country, and only thing he had was a Bible. I think that's the only thing he had. He didn't have religion before. He wasn't any practice, nothing. He didn't have any of that. But when you find yourself in situations, you're like, you know what? I'm going to need something a little stronger than just myself. So he had a Bible. He read that Bible through multiple times. He talks about getting the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, infilling of the Spirit. And when he was on one of his particular stations, because he was a medic, when he was at one of his particular, stations, he would hear these guys talk about this little children's home where this lady had, she was taking care of orphan children, and they would just go there and she would offer them hospitality. They would have beverages or biscuits or whatever they call them, cookies and that type of thing, and pray for the service people. And so he didn't have any reason to go there because he wasn't anywhere near. But once he got to the point where he would go and go to the children's home because they provided hospitality. He went, he met the lady and her children, provided hospitality. He goes back to his barracks and he begins to pray in the Spirit. Now, he had no inclination about wanting to be married. He's in his 30s, early 30s. He wasn't thinking about that. He's just trying to do his own and go back to where he came from to get back to his regular normal life. But as he begins to study the Bible, he believes that the Lord is orchestrating his step, something about marriage. He ends up having a dream, and in the dream, the Lord showed him into rivers that turned into oceans. And it was like, oh my goodness. When you haven't been walking with the Lord, and now you're walking with the Lord, and he's all of a sudden giving you revelation of his word, and he's giving you words about yourself, that's a whole nother level. I have a specific word about my marriage for absolute sure. And I've held on to that word since 2016. We're 9 years in. And I'm still holding on, right? And so he doesn't think anymore about it. He just continues to pray and seek the Lord and ask God what he wants. And then he's getting ready to get out of, and he figure out what to do with his life now. Am I going back to where I came from? But he's feeling very called to this place that he's serving in. And he meets a friend, and he's like, hey, will you pray with me? And so the friend says, absolutely, sure, I'll pray with you. And he begins to pray. There are 2 churches that he's thinking about. He's like, well, if I'm going to be in ministry, these are 2 churches I can go to, or I can go help out at the children's home. But he has no idea what he's going to do at the children's home. So he was feeling like the 2 churches. Well, his friends, and then he talks about, his friend says, God, if he just said something about the streams, the rivers, and the ocean. And he said that about the children's home. And here you have this man who didn't tell anybody about the dream that he had had from the Lord. And now his friend, who doesn't know anything about the dream, begins to say the same things that he felt in the dream. And he knew 100% that he was called to this woman. Also in the dream, the Lord had showed him a yoke, and he showed him 2 oxen yoked together, or 2 horses, or 2 mules yoked together. And he knew from reading through his Bible that was a symbolism for marriage. And so here this man is, again, living his life, doing all the things that he's doing, hadn't necessarily thought about marriage, but now he's had this dream, he's had this word from the Lord, and he knows this woman, and now he's thinking, God, are you really telling me to go together and join with her? Are we supposed to be yoked together? And I think that what was interesting about the book is how a lot of us should be responding to the Lord, especially those of us who call ourselves believers. Before, when I was worried about, is it him? Is it him? Is it him? God, I'm in the grocery store, I'm at the gas station. I mean, where the single man at? I'm everywhere. In Philippians 4:6, it tells us, be anxious for nothing, but in all things pray. And here I am, because this thing was riding me like Seabiscuit. I mean, my mind was everywhere. You're anxious, Shakema. How is that, God? No, pray. I gave you a word about your husband, not just 1, but 2 words. I've had 2 words about my husband since 2016. So if God already spoke, then what are you doing? And why are you worrying this thing in your mind? Because God is going to fulfill every promise that he made to you. The promises of God are yes and amen. I know that to be true. I don't have any other testimony than to tell you that God has never not kept his promise to me. So why is it that he won't keep this one? And so again, he talks about that, but he had some negatives about marrying this lady. First of all, she was from Denmark, Great Britain. We are now culturally different. The Bible tells us in Amos 3:3, how can 2 walk together lest they be agreed? That's Philippians 4:6, ma'am. Be anxious for nothing, but in all things pray. It expands a little bit more, but that's my loose paraphrase. So there, he's from Britain, she's from Denmark. They're culturally different. The next thing that was really like, oh my God, you have to hear from the Lord. He was in his early 30s, 32, 33, somewhere in there. and she was already middle age, which leads me to she was already in her late 40s, 45, 46, probably my age. So now you're talking about a 15, 17, 20-year difference in ages in this woman, and now I'm going to marry her. What does that mean for him? So you got to know that the Lord has called you to this person specifically, because she's already in her middle age. She more than likely will not have children. He's a young man. Do you want children? Because if you do, then you're not going to have them with this person, because she is getting well beyond childbearing years. So again, I got to know that I know that God is calling me to this person. That was the first thing. The second thing is, she had a children's home. It was an all girls home, because she used to take in orphan babies that nobody wanted. They would just bring them to her. She didn't experience being a parent, but she had a calling from the Lord. And this was the calling that she had. She didn't work a job, but God provided finances. She never knew where she was going to live, but God provided the place. So you have this man now, again, thinking, is this the person? Not only do I have to take this woman who is in her middle age, who will never be able to bear my children, but she also now has 8 children of her own, her 8 adopted daughters from all different cultures and all that. She doesn't work. How am I going to financially support this woman? And here's the other thing. He's an only child. He doesn't know about sibling rivalries. He doesn't know how to handle any of the kids. Let me read something that he said about her that I thought was so good, because I hear this quite often and it really does bother me, but I wanted to share this. Where was it? Oh, okay. He said in page 31, I began to dwell on the differences and difficulties. Lydia was from a cultural background quite unlike mine. She was a strong character, a natural leader. In the face of endless difficulties, she had built a work for the respect of the Christian community. She was used to fighting her own battles. Would she be willing to surrender headship in the home to a man much younger and less experienced than herself? Would it even be practical for her to do so? Because a lot of times we hear men talk about strong, independent women. We don't want no strong, independent woman. Well, here's the thing. When God has called you to couple with someone, it doesn't matter what they were. What matters now is that both of you are in your rightful roles, and the feminine will always defer to the masculine. A feminine woman will never usurp a masculine man's authority. Never. It just will not happen. I don't care how independent you be before. When a man shows up, and I'm talking about a man that's going to take on all of the things, not somebody that just look like a man. I'm talking about when a man's man shows up, you don't even have any questions about who just got here. That man is going to take care. And a woman who has been has been doing all the caregiving, when she knows that she is going to be cared for, she immediately and without pause releases her strength, because she now realizes it's his now. He's going to take this on. So again, even in this particular chapter, he was talking, I wonder, is she going to be able to do this? Well, if God has called you to the couple, remember, she has to fit into the purpose of God and plan for his life as well. He's not just coming to the rescue. She didn't see her life as missing anything. She was perfectly fine without him. They became better together. I'm not marrying you. I was watching something tonight on the TV, and the lady was having a real hard time taking care of her kids. So some random man just was like, "Hey, I'm going to marry you." He gave her a house, but he was mean to her. Did all kinds of things that nobody should ever be done to. And she's like, if I knew this, I would have just stayed by myself. So we're not talking, that's not this. We're talking about people who make a conscious choice and decision to be together. I know that God has called you, and you know that God has called me, and he's called us to work together. So let's be together. And so he talked about those differences, but he also talked about knowing that the Lord called him. Tell you that the Lord has been very specific with me about my husband. I shouldn't have wasted any time with that joker for 6 months. I already knew he wasn't the one. And I don't plan to waste another 6 days with nobody else, neither. But you 49, you should take whatever's out there. No, I shouldn't. Because if I'm not the right person for him and he's not the right person for me, we're going to frustrate each other. And not only when we frustrate each other, but we're going to end up separated anyway. So what's the point? That becomes the question. What's the point? Right? So you got to ask yourself here for a reason. Thank y'all so much for all of the things. I don't really know what they are, but thank you. I appreciate. What's the point? When this coupleness happened, and how do I know that God is calling me to it? The first thing you have to do is have a relationship with the Lord. If you don't have a relationship with the Lord, how are you going to know that it's him telling you to do something? The Bible says, my sheep know my voice, and the voice of a stranger they will not follow. So here you are, you doing randomized stuff, but did God tell you to do that? Because if it's not him, you're going to have problems all the way around. And so what I'm not willing to do and what I'm not going to do is just accept anybody and their randomness. God has put a specific life, and you have to be built for this. My husband has to have broad enough shoulders that when I fall, he can pick me up. And if that's not you, then keep it moving. And it ain't no hard feelings. We don't feel no type of way. I'd much rather not waste 49. I'd much rather not waste. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving because I thought there was some good points in here. This is what he said. This was on the first page. He says, no man is complete by himself, which I totally disagree. I 100% disagree in this regard. I believe every person should be whole, right? Before you get into a relationship, listen to me and hear me by the Holy Ghost. Before you get into a relationship, you should be whole, because a broken person will break another person. How can I start having a relationship? So the first thing, how can I start having a relationship with the Lord? It is just to get to know you. It is a simple prayer. Lord, I wanted to be in your presence. Lord, I want to know you. I'm empty without you. That though I can't give you the exact words because I don't know what you feel, but you just go to God as humbly as you know how and say, God, I just need you. I need somebody. And then find you a Bible base, a good Bible you can read, not the King James if you real new to this, because King James would take you to a whole nother level. But find something that you can understand. Start reading in the book of John. The book of John is really a love book. It's kind of a love story. And so you just start reading the book of John and you just pray to God and you just become, it's intimacy with him, it's fellowship, it's time spent. And I spend time with the Lord. If you need a group to join, please feel free to join Titus 2 Women. We would love to have you. We learn together, we grow together. We don't know all the things, but we find it out when we need to. So we're happy to help you. Just send me an email and I'll be happy to get you involved with it. We will be more than happy to have you. So I believe that every person that comes into a relationship or that wants a relationship should be whole. Because again, if I'm dealing with my past traumas, my past stuff that happened in my first marriage, if I'm dealing with my kids, if I got 3 and 4 different baby daddies and I got all these issues, if I got mama problems or whatever these things are, they're all going to now follow me into any relationship that I find myself in. So it would behoove us, it would be in our best interest for everybody involved for me to work out all those things. If you need therapy, go. If you need the Lord, get him. Whatever you got to do to make that thing right before you jump into a situation with somebody else. Because remember, everything you have, I'll bring it together. And we conglomeration is smorgasbord of all the stuff, and it's broken feelings, broken hearts, soul ties, um, expectation, all the stuff. And so this person may not have done any of that, but because carrying it and I haven't dealt with, I'm now treating them some type of way. And they're like, oh, I didn't get into this for this. I remember that one guy I was dating, and he just was this crazy stuff to me. And I wanted to grab his face one day and just say, I'm not her. I don't know who hurt you, but it wasn't me. Don't treat me like this, because I'm coming to you just as pure as I know how, just doing the best I can, but I'm not her. I wanted to literally grab his face and say, I'm not her. Stop treating me like I am, because I didn't do it. And so you make the other person have to fight an uphill battle trying to climb over all your crap when you don't get yourself together. And so if you have just gotten out of a situation, listen to me. Stay by yourself for a few minutes. I'm not saying you don't desire people. I'm saying get whole before you hurt that person. He says every man needs companionship. I believe that. Now, Paul did have a gift of singleness, a ministry of singleness. It was something that was specifically set for him. I don't believe it's specifically for everybody, but it was for him. For those of us who are not called to singleness, we do need companionship. I think in life in general, even if you don't couple for the purpose of population, I still need people, right? We do. And so that's, you learn how to relate to people. That's what relationships are. It's relating one to another. And most of us don't know how to relate to each other, because I'm loving you out of my pain and you loving me out of your pain, which really ain't love at all, because all we doing is being pain, and I got pain and you got pain, and now we pain each other, and we just a pain in the neck. So I think that what we need to do is to get whole. He says marriage is the closest and most intimate form of companionship possible between two people. His letter to Ephesians, Paul calls marriage a tree. In the Song of Songs, Solomon compares it to a locked garden. No academic discipline such as psychology or theology can unfold the mystery or open up the locked garden. God alone holds the key. Okay? Now, let me see what else I wanted to put up here. What else did I want to say about that? Trying to figure, I wrote myself some notes on here. So in one of the dreams that he had when he was first learning, having his relationship with the Lord, he said that the Lord had showed him his wife 3 years earlier, before he even met her. So you got to see, here's the thing, right? I'm going to need a man that God is already speaking to about me. I believe my husband has already heard the voice of the Lord about me. He just doesn't know who I am. I believe that some man is out here, and I'm not talking about random people, so don't come sliding them DMs. And if you over 50, don't come sliding in them DMs. No, we have not moved at all. We haven't moved. We still live where we live. We're right where we been. But here's the thing. I believe that the Lord can show your spouse is. You just have to be in close relationship with the Lord to be able to hear him. And so I already have known for the last 9 years what my husband is going to be like. I know who he is, and I know what God has planned for us to do together. Remember back in the first chapter where we talked about Adam and Eve, Eve's specific job was to help Adam. And if she couldn't help him, God would have never gave her to him. So your helper or your husband needs his helper is going to come and y'all going to be together. But what are we going to do together? And so he said that the Lord had already showed him his wife 3 years before. He mentioned this when the Lord was telling him about his wife. He says, the Lord said to him through his own lips, because he was praying and ended up praying in tongues, speaking in heavenly language, praying in the spirit. And the Lord said to him, I have joined you together under the same yoke and in the same harness. Remember, horses, oxen, mules, together. That yoke is to keep them going in the same direction at the same time. And God does not generally put ever unequalness. Ox are bred to do something totally different than horses. So are mules, right? So you got to make sure that you are in the right harness with the right particular same mate. Because if you put an ox who is bred for girth and power in a harness with the horse who typically is bred for speed, although they have power, they're going to be unequal. You won't even the harness won't even fit right, because a horse is typically 14, 15, 16 hands high, and an ox is about that wide. So the harness is going to look crazy, and they're not even going to be together. They're going to be fighting each other. So remember who you're supposed to be with. God can give you those specifics. He can give you specifics down to the exact specific, I believe. More followed, but those were the words that they mean. Since it was Lydia I had been praying for, they must refer to her. Had God joined the two of us together? If so, in what way and for what purpose? And here's what I wrote in my book. When he was praying for this woman, her name was Lydia again. When he was praying for her, she had no idea. She had no clue, no idea that this man was already going before the Lord praying for her. And he had really just started praying for her because he saw she had all them kids to take care of. She didn't have really no steady income coming in, although the Lord provided. She wasn't with any missionary group. She just took them kids and said, hey, if nobody else wants them, I'm going to take them. Whatever I eat, they going to eat, and we going to all be together. And she didn't even know about it. And I think it was at that moment for me specifically when I just really stopped worrying about God's business. I just had to stop worrying about the Lord's business. I didn't need to continue to rack my brain over who it was, when it was going to happen, how it was going to happen. None of that's my business. My one sole responsibility is to keep doing what God has called me to do right now. And when I continue to do what I'm doing, God's going to send the right person that I need to have it by now. Really? Like, is that necessary? I, for one, think it's totally unnecessary to say as if I'm ready or not. I'm just living my best life right now. I'm living the life that God has given me to live. I'm serving people. I've even asked myself times, I said, God, do I even have enough time in my life for a person? Because I'm busy. I have things to do. But when I wasn't busy before, I was just sitting in my house wondering where he was. Now I don't do any of that. I am assured that God has heard my prayer and he's going to answer. All right, let me share a couple more things and I'm going to move on. Another thing that he worried about was because he was so new in the Christian faith, he didn't know how he was going to make a living in the Christian faith. like, how am I supposed? I don't have a church. He didn't have anything. But his wife was she was well known in the Christian community. And she had to fight for that. She had to really get herself in with people who, because she was not from their country, they looked at her and, why are you trying to be with us? And as a man, no, I like what you said. Exactly. Be where your feet are. I love that. I love that. Do what God has called you to do. I love it. Absolutely. I apologize. Y'all may have to use my old computer next time. I don't typically have these issues, but I'm using my new computer and it's not doing what I needed to do. But what I wrote in my book was, God had a plan for that as well. Here's a man getting ready to take on a woman with 8 children, and they ended up adopting another girl. So 9 children, and all of their children, except for one, got married. Jessica, who was their youngest, she was from Kenya. She actually did not get married and took care of them. They aged. Now, remember, his wife was 15, 17 years older than him. And so, of course, she passed on before he did. I think he was 62, 60, something like that when she passed away. And she was well into her either late 70s or early 80s when she died. And so he's wondering, how am I going to support this family? And God already had a plan for him as well. He's like, do what I'm telling you to do. Take her on. Because I've heard men say this. I've heard men say this, and it really bothers me. I don't want a woman with no kids. Okay, she don't want you with your kids either. Just so you know, we don't want your kids either. And everybody has a right to have what they want, but you're missing people. You're discounting people for stuff that is just totally ridiculous. I get it. You want to have your own children, but here this is in his early 30s, still able to, and heard the voice of the Lord say, take on this woman with her kids. And he did that. And God blessed him immeasurably with this woman. And I believe it was because it was a divine connection. So asking God, what's my divine connection? Who am I supposed to be with? Because the other part of this for me, I want to be with the right person and not waste time. There's things we need to do together, accomplish together for us to waste time. And if wasting time jam, then I'm the wrong person for that. Does that make sense? Y'all be sure and like the video, share, subscribe, do all the things, follows, whatever, depending on whatever platform you watching me on, do all the things, okay? All right. I'm going to share this last little bit, and then I got to go because we've been on here long enough. He's going down his marrying this woman. It would be bad for this reason, this reason, this reason, and this reason. He said, brief sentence. God had spoken. God told him to marry her. So when somebody says to you, God told me to do it. Now, I'm not telling you, listen to Shakema very carefully. I'm not telling you to go to somebody and say, God told me you're my husband. Trust me, they'll know. Or I say, you're my wife. Now, y'all, yeah, that's a whole nother level of conversation you got to have. They got to know it as well. But he knew for sure Lord had spoken, not only through the dream he had, but also through his friend who didn't know anything about the woman. He was just praying a prayer. And it so worked out in his favor. And so what I want to say is, know the voice of the Lord. Are you praying? What are you praying for specifically? Has God given you dreams? I'm not talking about woo-woo crazy stuff. The Lord gave me a word about my husband, and I'll share. Will be working in your ministry. Your husband will be working in his ministry. When the two ministries meet, I couldn't even meet my husband before about 10 years because I wasn't in ministry 10 years ago. Does that make sense? So I wanted a new husband way back when. The Lord said specifically, you'll be and he'll be in his ministry. And I wasn't, so it couldn't even come to pass until I accepted the call of God on my life. And that took a long time because I didn't feel like God, he would call anybody surely, but not me. Because the husband that needs me is in ministry. He's going to need somebody who understands ministry, the travel, the time, the effort, the energy, the going all the time, the doing this, the doing that, the on calls, the funerals, the births. I need somebody that understands all of that. Same with me. It can't be any random Joe Schmo because ministry is my life. It's what I do. It's who I am. And you can't be asking me, well, where you going this week? I'm going to preach. What you mean where I'm going this week? What we need to be talking about is, am I going with you, or you going with me, or are we coordinating, or we at the same event, or do you have one this week and I got one next week? That's the kind of spouse I need. Because they'll understand why I'm gone 4 weeks out the month. Does that make sense? Our tenor preachers, we move around. That's what we do. Okay. All right. I'm going to read this last thing. And I'm going to be done. He says, throughout the years, Lydia had one source of strength that never failed. In our personal prayer life, we continually enabled to claim promises of Matthew 18:19. Matthew 18:19. Remember that. Again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. That's your New King James Version. There's one commented one person. So here you have to remember she was already in ministry together. The woman was created for the man to help him in the job that God gave him. Past them all. Here's the thing. I want to make sure that when my husband and my children are saying anything about that, my children, my husband says, many women have done great things, but you, Shakema, you surpass them all. Yes, ma'am. Just send me an email or send me your email address. Just DM me and I'll send the information. Love to have you. There are no rules except don't bring no drama because we don't do none of that. You would get prayed out real quick, period. But we have you. It would be our pleasure to host you. Anywho, all right, y'all. That's what I'm saying for this week. I'm going to move on. I'm moving on. And let me just tell you, next week, we're going to talk about his second marriage. Next week, we're talking about his second marriage. And this is going to be a whole situation because with this lady, there was a lot happening all at one time. And it does start the way you think or turn out the way you think. So I just want to invite you all to join me back here next week, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Standard Time. We're going into chapter 3. which is called Ruth. That's his second. We're reading the book, God is a Matchmaker, and we're just through it. Ourselves as we wait on the Lord to join us, our covenant partner. Guys, I will see you all in just another few days. Sunday night, join me back here. My computer's acting out. I may just use the other one next time. I do